Hello everyone, welcome. I'm Robert and this is a solo review for Twilight Inscription, the epic roll and write experience. This is a roll and write game based on the Twilight Imperium board game, and just for some disclosure, I have not had a chance to play Twilight Imperium in the past, so that's not going to influence my opinion of the game. I will discuss a bit more details on that later. I'm a solitaire board game for the majority of how I play board games. I'm also I started not that long ago in 2020, so there's still tons of board games that I have to try. But one day I would for sure like to try Twilight Imperium. I have known about that board game for a while, just never found a board gaming group that is into it, but definitely want to try it one day. Now, because of that, I've wanted to try Twilight Imperium for a while. I was immediately attracted to the idea of a Twilight Imperium related board game that I could play solitaire. All right, so this does come with a solo mode. That's what we're here to discuss. And now, so what do I think? All right, so this is a bigger scale roll and write game where you have to manage 4 boards. All right, so you have warfare, navigation, industry, and expansion, all right, boards. And there's also a Mechatol Rex board that you use for solitaire games and for 2-player games, all right. Now, this would be considered a bigger scale roll and writes. There's other smaller roll and writes. So as far as my experience with this category of game, I've tried Cartographers, I've tried Castles of Burgundy dice game, Fleet the dice game, enjoyed all of them, especially Cartographers. I think it's a masterfully, one of the best solo board games in my collection, one of my favorites, masterfully done game, recommended. Now, so that's my experience with roll and writes, okay? So now, I've also heard of Hadrian's Wall, all right? Many people compare this to Hadrian's Wall because they're that type of roll and write that's bigger, crunchier, all right? Still haven't gotten around to try that. I do have that on my list, so I won't be able to give you that comparison here, unfortunately. Now, I played this 5 times now, and the first thing that I'll point out immediately, okay, is that for the very little amount of setup that is involved, so 5 to 10 minutes tops, all right, of setup, you get a solid hour and a half on average session, okay? Maybe 2 hours if you're still getting used to the rules, 1 hour and maybe 1 hour if you don't have a lot of analysis paralysis and you already have the rules down, okay? But for very little setup, you get an amazingly crunchy hour and a half session, okay, minimum. And that's a big plus for me because sometimes for the amount of crunch that this game offers, for how thinky it is, I typically for that category of game, it requires more involvement, more setup, more pieces, all right? So for example, smaller board games, you know, that you take on the road with you or on trips, those type of games typically, you know, they're kind of filler games and they're not that as satisfying as bigger games with more complex rules or more pieces, but this, it kind of has that sweet spot. Very little, very few components, very little setup, but I just love what it offers, all right? So you're gonna have to juggle the 4 boards, all right? And you try to combo and try to make the best out of the dice rolls, all right? And you're gonna be using the 3 different kinds of dice face results to mark across the boards and just try to get the best out of it. Now, another positive, all right, that I have to mention, so the very little time, so one thing I mentioned already, the very little setup time versus the crunchy experience that you get with and length, just sweet spot there. Now, another thing I have to mention is the variability, all right? So there's tons of races that are included in the game, okay? So I believe it's 24 races, all right? If I remember correctly, I don't remember the exact count right now, but over 20 races, all right, that you pick randomly at the beginning of the game, and the races really do alter your strategy, all right? So depending on what race you choose, it really does alter the trajectory of the game, all right? So that's one variable there, the races. Then you have 8 boards for the 4 kinds. You have, like I said, warfare, expansion, industry, and navigation. All right, so 8 of each kind. Okay, so 8 boards of each that are randomized. There's also a standard board. All right, so if you want, if in case you're playing this with other people, if you want everybody to have the same board, you all can switch to the side B of the board, and it's the same for everybody. All right, but you have 8 variable boards, and that just adds so much replayability. All right, because the boards do really have, again, just like how races change the trajectory of what strategy you're picking, the boards really also might synergize better with your race, or they might kind of make you lean towards a different strategy. So throughout the five games that I played, I really found just how much the different boards changed my strategy. All right. Now you also have variability in the order in which events come out. So there's stages throughout the game. All right. So you have 1 through 5 stages, and that's gonna the order is gonna be different every time. Okay. So you're not always sure what event will come out. That'll make you use resources differently. Okay, so variability there. And also you have council events. So let me bring up council events. So I'm not going to go over the rules here, all right, or how the game plays. It's just a review, but let me mention my first negative, all right, and it's the council event. So at least I don't know if it will be different in multiplayer, but in solitaire, I found that the council events were kind of lackluster, all right. The voting aspect of the game and the outcomes of voting, I thought it was all right. I really was just not a fan of that aspect. Maybe if they make an expansion for the game, they'll polish this aspect. I thought this was the weakest part of the game. The whole voting thing, just trying to vote against the bot, and then the pass or fail outcome sometimes felt like I didn't really care, and it could, depending on what stage the voting aspect happens towards the end, it might not have much of an impact, depending on which event you end up getting, all right? So this is one of the only few negatives that I'll mention. The voting mechanic of the game, at least in solitaire, I thought it was pretty lackluster. Maybe they'll polish it in an expansion, like I said, but not a deal breaker. I still just enjoy the turn-to-turn, rolling the dice, trying to get the best out of the resources that you get, and unlocking things on the board, trying to just juggle all the 4 boards. So, all right, so we have races, the different boards, the stages. Now, we also have objectives, all right? So you also have various objectives for all the boards that are going to vary per game, adding more replayability, all right? And you also have a couple difficulty settings for the AI, all right? If you're kind of, kicking the AI's butt and you want to challenge yourself, you're going to be able to increase that challenge level, all right? And then another amazing thing is the relics, okay, and that are included in the game. So relics are pretty broken cards with broken effects that you have to do some work to acquire them. But once you acquire them, the effects are incredible, and there's quite a lot of relics that are included in the game. And when you draw a relic, it just feels so good. When you read the effect and you're like, wow, I can do that. It's just nuts what the relics can do. And, this also adds replayability because there's so many, and you only get to draw up to 2 typically per game, and that this is also going to change, depending on what relic you may draw, that could change your strategy, all right? So I love the relics in this game, all right, I have to say. And now, like I said, I have not played Twilight Imperium, so I cannot give you an opinion on how it represents that board game, how much it carries from it. But I can tell you, at least from someone who's completely new to this IP, all right, I love the iconography. I think it's clear. I don't have any complaints about the iconography, the readability, the component quality. The art is amazing. Just typical Fantasy Flight fare, in my opinion. Typically they do a really good job with art and design. Not an issue here with the component quality either. Now, I have heard some complaints about the chalk markers. I have not had an issue with them yet. I also haven't had an issue erasing from the board. Now, to be fair, I did buy I bought a acrylic board that I put over the whole thing to make just to keep the boards in place so that they don't move around, and to make cleaning a bit at the end easier. I'm a bit rough when using the towel, so I want to make sure I don't scratch or bend the boards accidentally. So at the end, when playing, when I'm at the end of the session, I just like cleaning the acrylic board instead. So I thought it was a nice, it didn't cost, it only cost me $10, so I thought it was a nice investment for this game and for other future roll and rides that I might purchase that are like this with laminated boards. All right. So, and last thing I'll mention, one thing that made setup easier was using a dice app. So since there's 8 boards, you can set up a dice app with 4 colored 8-sided D8s. All right, and you just roll, and there you go. Now you know which board you pull out. All the boards are numbered, okay, as you hopefully can see here. All right, so all the boards are numbered, and by just rolling that, I know which boards I want to I'll need to pull out if I want to randomize it. Okay, the app, by the way, it's this one, because there's many dice app in the app store. It's the one that has that icon right there. All right, I don't know if you can see it. I'll link it in the description if you're interested. This is just one of the many apps, the dice apps that exist. All right, but if you're interested, I'll link it. It just makes setup easier. Yeah. So to summarize, okay. Positives. Quick setup versus crunch ratio. All right, so that's number one positive for me. I just, again, typically with the brain burn that this game offers me, I associate it with games with much more complex rules. All right, now this game it wasn't difficult to learn, by the way. I didn't find it difficult to learn. I would say it's like a medium complexity. The turn to turn isn't. The turn to turn it's simple. You basically just flip a card, use the resources, and roll the die. That's really it. Most of the turns in the game. All right. So I really didn't think that this was difficult to learn at all. The AI has very low maintenance, another positive, by the way. The little to no maintenance AI, to be honest. Okay. So yeah, back to summarizing. All right. So yeah, very great crunch to. Setup ratio, right, and rules complexity. So didn't take me that much to learn these rules, and has very little setup, but it offers a very crunchy experience, which with most board games I associate that with very bloated rules or tons of components, which that's typically the payoff of that, is that you get a great crunchy, brain burning experience. But this kind of has that sweet spot. So that's one. Now, 2, great component quality, no issues there. I did hear some complaints about the chalk markers, people saying that it's difficult to erase. I haven't encountered that myself, but you can research that a bit on your own if you have that concern. Okay. Now, replayability, third positive. Okay, so incredible replayability because of the 8 different types of the 8 different boards for the 4 kinds. Okay, so you get 24 boards in total, plus all the races and the relics. All right, so just picking a different race will change the trajectory of your game. All right, you combine that with the different boards, and it's just every game. There's not gonna be any 2 games that are the same. Okay, and yeah, with the relics and all, great replayability in this game. All right. So I think to summarize that pretty much is it. The negative that I did mention earlier. Was that the council events. That's my only negative with the game, honestly. It's just the council events and the council and voting mechanic. Again, I don't know if it's better when playing multiplayer, but I just did not find it very compelling. All right, the whole voting mechanic here. I'll say that. If that was improved upon, hopefully with an expansion, this would be a 10 out of 10, all right? And this has become my favorite, my absolute favorite roll and ride. Now, it's kind of toe-to-toe with cartographers. Cartographers is just very elegant and smaller, easier to learn, more portable. So it's kind of toe-to-toe with that. But it's kind of a different category because it is more complex, a bit bigger, well, definitely bigger scale, all right? So they're a bit apples to oranges. They're not exactly the same, but they're still in the blank, roll, flip, and ride, whatever ride category. And but this just, I loved it. I love this game, and if it was a smaller scale, then it would probably immediately, I would automatically just better than cartographers. But cartographers kind of it's in its own category because of the scale, all right? But yeah, I don't know if once I do get around to trying Hadrian's Wall, I don't know if Hadrian's Wall will beat this for me, all right? But it definitely has a tough challenge there for it to be better than this, but I might change my mind. I might end up liking Hadrian's Wall more. I will see when I get around to that. But for now, that's pretty much it. I already listed the positives, negatives. I hope that helps you make an informed decision if you want to purchase this for solo play. But other than that, folks, that is pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any comments, please let me know in the comments below, or if you have any questions or thoughts that you would like to share. If anything I said was inaccurate, please again feel free to share. And that's it. Thank you so much again. See you in the next one.